All right, guys, welcome back to the Second Degree. I'm LC, and looking forward to introducing you guys to a really amazing coach that I've had the privilege of knowing for a couple of years now. Today, I'm joined by Robyn LaLonde. She is a USA Track and Field coach. She is a Nike Run Club coach. She is also the awesome owner of Edge Athlete Lounge in Chicago. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So, Robyn, tell us a little bit about your journey in starting Edge. Let's start there because Edge is an amazing community. So tell us a little bit about it and how you got that going.
Yeah, so Edge is it's truly kind of a community and a culture more than anything else. The full name is Edge Athlete Lounge, and we're effectively a gym that has a healthy dose of recovery, strength, nutrition, but really truly kind of like a home for athletes, which has been very interesting to reconstruct in the past year. It all kind of came out of us getting into endurance sports. And my husband and I got into many, many years ago now. Triathlons. I have a running and a swimming background, and he has a cycling background. So I was like, we should put these together. And then we got into longer and longer distances. And when we got up to Ironman distance, we started working with a coach and training with a group. And, like I did team sports. I was captain, of all of the teams I was on. And I always loved that dynamic. But as an adult athlete, I don't know why, I just didn't think to do anything in that sense. And we joined, and I was kind of like, wow, we're probably going to get tired of these people. We're going to be on a bike with them for like 6 hours. And the opposite happened. And we were kind of really surprised by that like we'd get done riding and we were like riding a high, and then we would still want to hang out and kind of rehash the day. And we would go for like a burger and a beer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we kind of always said, like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, you got to, the after could be improved. And even cooler if it could be improved and make you a better athlete and less injury prone and all of the above. So we came up with this idea of kind of creating a home for athletes that would offer a ton of high-end recovery tools. And we speak specifically to the everyday athlete. So we absolutely have professional athletes as members, but our job is once you walk in, everybody is an athlete and everybody is the same. So there's like no ego. Like, I was talking to an athlete today that was thinking about joining up, and she was an endurance athlete, and she's worried about doing strength with people around because she's like, I'm not very good at it. I'm like, listen, like, we have people that are looking to lose 100 pounds with us because we do body comp stuff too. And like, you might be working out with that, next to that person. You guys aren't competing against each other, but you're both working really hard, and you want to, level up because that person's leveling up. That's where the secret is. So we're 7 years old now. And we've grown and molded, and we're, 4 years into having year-round run and triathlon training outside of our space too. So that's been really fun to grow during the last year. We doubled our space. Did you ever see it? You never saw the annex, right, Lindsay?
I did not get to see the annex. I left Chicago just before that was developed, so I'm a little bummed about that actually.
Thank God we had it too, because it's 3,000 square feet of just wide open gym space, and that's really dedicated to strength training and group training. And we even have like an outdoor space with big garage doors. Yeah, and then I would say, like, more than anything in the last year, we've lost a lot, just like any small business owner. It's kind of like staggering when you look at the numbers, but we're also left with this like overwhelming just support and really truly the strongest sense of community and culture I know that we've ever had. Like, I mean, a great example is like in the past, we've raised a ton, which is like 20 or 2,000 pounds of food, like canned goods, between Thanksgiving and Christmas for the Greater Chicago Food Depository, because they tend to do big food drives and they have a really big need for food, of course, around the holidays. This year, we did not want people bringing in canned goods. We don't want your canned goods, but we did it virtually instead. And we ended up doing, I think, 30,000 pounds of food, 31,000 pounds of food. So we did like 17 times what we've done in the past.
That's huge.
And that's just, yeah, it was just super cool. And, our coaches got involved, and we had one of our coaches, Coach Chris, made sure that he did burpees. He did 20 burpees, 21 burpees in one day. He was shredded after that. And we offered free classes that people would donate to jump in on that. So that stuff like that just really proves, people want to show up for each other. You have to give them an outlet, and you have to try really, really freaking hard to stay around and stay open long enough so that outlet survives. but they're coming back. It's in a regrowth phase, and that's pretty cool because we get to build it from what I think and I know is the strongest kind of distilled version it's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, I can personally say that your community was life-changing for me.
Oh,
As an athlete, being able to be around other athletes and people that got it, right? You weren't the weird, hyper athletic person that's really not that athletic, right? You're going for a run and then you're going to go do the thing. It's such a cool place to be. But what I think you nailed is the magic of community there. Everybody at that lounge, that gym, cares about each other and cares about other people and cares about the community. And I know the website says you guys have what 5,000 people that you've touched so far. That's huge.
Yeah, it's probably we should have probably added up at some point. I feel like that number is probably higher. The really kind of cool thing too, coming back and reopening, is that I think we're at a huge advantage as a facility because people do care. Like, even if you don't personally know the person next to you, you're going to keep your friggin' mask up because you know that you might know them right in the future. And also you just care. And, they are just really, really, really good about following guidelines, and we are wildly transparent when we have an exposure in the space, and we've had zero spread. I think we're up to 6 exposures and zero spread from all of them. So we're really proud of those things. The first one, of course, like completely freaked us out, and then by like the fourth one we're like, we got this, we know the protocol. But it's that stuff that just goes to prove that it's not, being an adult athlete is not a solitary sport. And we always kind of knew that, but it's pretty special to see it, when they have each other's backs too. It's kind of blossomed into this like extraordinary circumstance that really showed it, the cream rose to the top, and we just keep seeing that over and over.
Absolutely. So you mentioned playing sports growing up and being a team captain. While you were in school and while you were coming up in athletics, what's one thing that you learned that you just felt like it was a complete waste of time? And now as an adult, you look back and you go, yeah, okay, I get it. That was important.
Oh, at the time, I thought it was a waste of time.
Yeah. At the time, you thought it was a waste of time.
Hilarious. I probably strength training. I mean, especially I grew up as a ballerina as well. And I mean, we just were not supposed to get bulky. So it was always, oh, you're going to get bulk up if you strength train. And, I did it. I mean, my coach told me to do it. So I did it. And I was always like, oh, I'm so sore. And now I understand, obviously, because I'm much older than that. You gotta fortify that musculoskeletal system in order for it to sustain the load and to maximize what you need to do. I think that was probably the most egregious thing. And, in my, especially early 20s, like late teens, early 20s, I did not strength train. It wasn't on my radar because I am a cardio whore as much as, most endurance athletes are. And now it's something I have to goad myself. Today, I didn't let myself do my run until I did a class. And that's worked well for me.
That was actually the power of Edge for me, was the accountability for strength training. Because as an endurance athlete, I could have cared less about strength training 99% of the time. I'll go for a run.
Yeah.
Let me just go for a run. It's fine.
It's just so accessible, but you can't, turns out you can't only move in one plane forever and ever and be okay.
Shocker, right? The older you get.
That's not how our bodies like to move. They like to be a little bit more dynamic than that, for sure.
So, in that same vein, if you look back at some of the things that you wish you would have been taught coming up, just in general or as an athlete, what's one thing that everybody should be taught?
I think as a kid, especially, I never really understood my limits. Not that anybody told me, you can only be a middle distance runner, but I never, I guess, questioned kind of the silo that I was put in. And I was always really surprised when I got into endurance racing, specifically into ultras. I had no clue that I could be so competitive at such long distances. I always just kind of thought oh, I'm a, I've got fast turnover and power, I didn't really ever think that how it could translate into something bigger. So I think just exposing kids or even, adults that are just getting into like 5Ks, 10Ks of like, no, if you can run 3 continuous miles, you can train yourself to do a marathon. Like they don't understand that leap. And it's that leap that like I live for now as a coach. Like I find that when people give me a very visceral response, I'm trying to think of one that I got recently. I mentioned a 100-mile race. We were talking with another athlete, and someone else that was sitting at 6 feet in boots was like, "Oh, I would never do that." And I'm like, "Careful, because when you tell me that, when you say those words without me even asking you, it usually means that you're going to do it in the future, right?" And so you just that moment of thinking like, that's scary as hell, but I kind of want to do it. I think we can do a better job instilling that in people earlier in the process.
Yeah. Mindset. And it's funny you mentioned that, don't speak so fast, because I went through that as a runner too. I said for years, like, I'll never do anything longer than a 5K. And then it was a half marathon. And then it was, I'll never do anything more than a half. And then I found myself on a 20-mile trail race, swearing off anything, ever again. So it's so interesting to see where our minds go to in those situations, especially if there's a little bit of fear there or it just sounds crazy, right? When you talk about a 100-mile race, that sounds crazy to most people. It sounds impossible, right? But there are people out there that do it every
And
year. There are people that do it even through COVID, they've been doing it.
there are people that are doing it that you like looking at them, you would never think, right? So just like that,
Right.
just never assuming that one type of person or one type of athlete can do any one thing or can only do one thing, right? You just got to bust past that. And I think that that's really just a wonderfully humbling on both sides mentality to take on.
And it's important in those positions to have the community, right? The people that are going to fortify that mindset of, okay, I can do this, versus the people that are chirping in your ear going, there's no way. Like, you're going to get hurt. You can't do this. It's too long. It's too hard.
I just
Right.
finished. Oh man, I think it might be You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. I think it was in this one. And she was talking about the crab effect. And I just always think about this with who we surround ourselves with, right? Because we've all heard like your direct reflection of the top 5 people that you spend your time with. And I think that that's really important to keep in mind, especially as you progress your way into adulthood. And the crab effect goes like this, that like if you put a bunch of crabs in a bowl, and one is trying to get out, the other crabs will actually pull it back down. And that's,
Wow.
I think, where you get being crabby from, like the whole, like, don't
Okay.
worry, right? It's like,
Yeah.
don't bring people down. Um, just making sure that you're not around a bunch of crabs, because that's really speaking to other people's, um, issue with their own ego and their own fear of not being able to do things. That is a reflection of something about them and not about the person. We always joke in our household that all of this stuff got started by one interaction with Brian this is like 20 years ago at this point, but he said, I got asked by a friend of mine who was in dog class with us. This is when Bruce was doing agility, like our first pug, best boy in the whole world. And
Love Bruce.
I know, Bruce. And we were just chatting because, class is like an hour long. And she's like, I think I had gotten up to like, I hadn't even done a half marathon before. And she's like, we're going to it was Beach to Battleship. It's a race that doesn't exist anymore. Very, very popular, but they did it in a relay format. She knew that I had a running background and she's like, hey, you want to run the marathon? And I was like, whoa, maybe. Right. And I came home and Brian was in the bathroom getting ready for bed. And I asked him, I said, hey, Michelle asked me to run the marathon at Beach Battleship. And he looked at me, he said, do you think you could run a marathon? And I was like, oh, hell no. And he meant it as like, would you have time? He didn't mean to like inside of me, but what I heard was like, do you actually think that you could run a marathon? He would never say that to me. It's probably like my own insecurities coming through. And I was like, oh, we're signing up for a marathon now.
It's happening. It's on.
And that was literally what tipped all the crazies, was that one comment. He was not trying to be crabby, but it's funny how you can react. You know, can either believe the thing that people say to you, or you can refute against it. And I'm always like, use it as fuel.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So in that vein, tell us about the Edge axioms. This is one of the things that I absolutely loved about coming to Edge, and it's something that I still implement in my daily life. But the axioms are a huge part of the community.
They are. We need to weave them in, or start to reweave them in. We tend to bring each one up about once a year. So our axioms are essentially what we built our brand on, in terms of what we represent, what our athletes represent, and our employees helped build them and craft them. And we bring them up. I mean, they're just sound bites that we just say over and over and over. So everything from honor the sweat bond, which I just really wish I remember who came up with that, but someone did. Which just means, give enough about the person next to you and make sure to lift them up. Don't be a crab. All the way to my favorite, which is mediocrity has no home here, which is heavy handed. And that's very much my style, but it's like, don't come and do it half-assed. Just come and do your best. And that is what belongs in this space and what belongs in your heart. And then, one that we recently added, which is my favorite one, which is fear less, brave more. And that was inspired by our late pugs. And it's like huge mural in the annex. And every time I see it, it just makes me feel so warm and fuzzy. And it's just also pretty incredible that we launched that right before COVID hit. And then it just took on like a whole new meaning, and we printed it out and had a huge banner across the front of our space when we were still shut down, and people would like run by it and take selfies with it. Really my job, and another one, is to listen to that crazy voice inside your head, because it's telling you what you're dreaming of, however crazy it may sound. And that's really like our job, is to put those sound bites in your head, so that they're in, I always say, put them in your pocket for race day, but on a tough day or whatever it is, put it in your pocket. And then you can bust out one of the axioms like you do so smartly and mindfully. And then you can use that nugget, to overcome your obstacle or to help you navigate. And I'm really proud of them. And I mean, I come back to them all the time too. So I
Yeah.
love that they're sticky.
They are. They're very sticky. And it's funny you mentioned mediocrity has no home here being a little heavy handed, but still your favorite, because it's mine too. It's actually on every one of my mirrors.
Oh, that's awesome.
It still lives on every single one of my mirrors. So that's my heavy handed reminder to get my butt moving every day.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, let's
so, like,
go.
it doesn't mean you have to like run at 100% every day. It just means,
Right.
don't check your phone 75 million times, when you could do it in two, and then, figure out something better that you could do with your time.
Right. Yeah. Where do I want to be?
Yeah,
Right. And
exactly. Like,
that's
where am I?
and am I surrounded by the people that are going to empower me to do that? Am I
Yeah.
doing the things, taking the actions that are going to allow me to do that?
And I think too, when we say mediocrity has no home here too, you then it raises everyone up, right? Because it makes me want to do. I mean, today I was like doing this ridiculous upper body class, and I had an 8, a 10, and a 15, and I'm doing my 8, and I'm looking around, and like I was the only girl, so all the guys were using 10s, and I'm like, oh fuck that, I'm going to use a 10.
I'm
I'm
in.
switching
I'm
this.
in. Right.
Because it's like, I can do what they're doing. And, that makes me, because I wanted to work harder than another guy went to 15. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is exactly how this is supposed to work. We're just trying to level up and match the other person's level of effort in an overall betterment of the entirety. And that's the cool part, is like when you walk in and that everyone's kind of gonna give what they should give. It absolutely happens in the other direction though. Like inside the coach chats, we have a joke about switching lunge jumps. Like when you do like a 90-90 bend and then you jump and you switch your legs. We joke that like we could really tell when people getting like really mentally burned out with COVID, because we could not get people to jump. It's like one person in class would do the stepping, and maybe they needed to because they had an injury. And then all of a sudden the whole freaking class was doing stepping. And like we would just lose our shit. We would pause the class and be like, what is going on? Like it says split leg lunge jump. It doesn't say step and switch.
Right. Jump in the air.
Well, and if you step it down a notch, the person next to you is going to step it down a notch. Or if you stop 1 second before the final beep, the next person's going to find that too, right? So, we're constantly making sure that people get on the right side of that,
Yeah.
because we're all better than we think that we could be, and that's just, you can't be making excuses at this stage.
Right. Right. I think one of my favorite moments in the community a couple of years ago is when we started doing just the silly challenges, right? We would videotape ourselves doing something and then send it to somebody and say,
Oh
oh,
yeah,
you're next or you're up. And they had to one up you.
yeah,
And one of those popped up in my news feed not too long ago. And I looked at it and I went, man, my shoulders were ripped.
yeah.
Like, all right. So I'm bringing it back. Just get ready. I'm bringing back the one up challenge.
Yeah, do it. I love it. Yeah, especially when we did like the crazy balance ones with the poles.
With the pulleys. That was the one. Yep. That was a lot of fun.
That was a great
So,
one. Yeah. Okay, I'm
I
bringing
mean,
it back.
speaking of doing, right? Speaking of doing hard things, because those challenges were a blast, but they were hard, right? We were putting ourselves in weird balance positions and doing pulls with resistance bands, just crazy stuff. But obstacles, hard things. What are some of the biggest obstacles that you've overcome, either in athletics or life or in business? I mean, COVID withstanding, right?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think the biggest thing that we've had for sure is just trying to open. I mean, opening in a big city in a manufacturing district was, I mean, the hardest thing for sure we've ever done. I think as business owners, I obviously own it with my husband Brian. Um, COVID was a second. I mean, we kept saying like, this is the hardest we've ever worked, second only to opening. And at some points it was even harder because it was like I get very, I'm a very frank person and I'm very direct. And, people would be like, oh, you guys pivoted so well. I'm like, F that. Like, it's not like pivoting doesn't have a cost. It's not effortless. And like all of these small businesses are having to pivot, pivot, pivot. And there's a cost to every single time you do it. Like there's a mental cost, there's a serious financial cost. Um, there's a piece of my soul that we left out there, right? Now I think, we've seen
Right,
the
right.
worst of it. We've definitely, looked you know, the end in sight and said, like, can we do this? And I think that there's a lot of power in figuring out how the hell to get out of the hole. And we're still in the hole. But everyone is, right? It's not like it's just us. So I think that for me was monumental. I mean, like, and I wouldn't say that we're done with it. And who knows, maybe with a variant, we might have to go backwards. But I really love the peace of mind of knowing that we've already done it already. Like, and everyone's just cooler with it too. Like if we get locked down again, okay, we'll run another huge virtual challenge and put everybody back on virtual and roll back to a 6 a.m. start classes instead of 5:30 because everyone has a little bit extra time. And we'll figure it out because we've already done it. So I love that we can look back and say, okay, like we did that. We have friends who own Core, COEUR, which is a women's endurance line, and they're just awesome people. And we had some major bumps in the final couple months of us building out, and they're from LA, and they actually came to Chicago, and it was like a come to Jesus moment of like, do we just walk away from this? Like we are so far in, but we could back out if we wanted to. And I remember being outside because at the time we were locked out of our space, even though we shouldn't have been. And we were outside on our deck with them, and it was a really beautiful day. And I was like, okay, I need you guys to tell me right now why you want to do this. Like, what makes you want to keep doing this? And Reggie said, I love it because it's hard. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, this has been hard for like a year. Like, how does it get easier? And he's like, no, I love it because it's hard, because it means that if I can outwork or outsmart or out strategize, and if it's this hard for me, I know less people are likely to do exactly what we're doing. And that makes our ability to thrive and do even more than survive is elevated. And I was like, man, that's a good way of looking at things. That's a really, really good way of looking at things. Like,
That's huge.
I like it because it's hard. And I think that
Yeah.
with endurance or even, weight loss or any of the things, I do think deep down people like it because it's hard. There's a novelty to doing hard shit. And instead of being scared of it, just realizing we'd have to chop it up into these steps. But that perseverance and face in the face of adversity is that's the stuff that you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and be really proud of.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, real quick, we're getting close on time here. I like to keep it
Yeah.
around 30 minutes, but let's do a couple of quick rapid fire questions. One book you think everybody should read?
Can I give two?
Yeah, of course you can give
Okay.
two. I'll always take more books, and I will link them in the show
No,
notes.
I mean, okay. So one that was life changing for me is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Mason. I mean, like, literally, it came to me at the perfect time. I love that the only thing that you're entitled to in life is suffering. I think it's such a wonderful way to think about existing so that you don't get mad when things don't go your way and just letting go of entitlement. It was a really, really powerful mental shift for me. And I use it all the time coaching, and it really resonates with people. The first third is very light, and then it gets heavier. And then the second one is The Nature Fix by Florence Williams, which top 5 all-time book for me, especially now. It's based on the premise of the fact that we're majority in big cities right now versus rural areas, and what that does to our sympathetic nervous system and why we need nature to address that. And it gives really practical knowledge. They're both nerdy. The Nature Fix is really nerdy, but just roll up your sleeves and dive in, especially if you've ever felt like, man, I just want to like go to a park if you've had a hard day. There's a reason for that, and knowing the reasons will make a huge difference in your mental and physical health.
Amazing. I love The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It's a
Oh,
great book.
love. I probably reread it every 6 months. It's mine so
I
marked
think,
that no one can ever borrow my copy.
I think one of my favorite moments was a friend coming over to my place in Chicago and picked it up off of my bookshelf and looked at it and went, "It's the subtle part, right? That's what this is about for you."
Yes, it's the subtle, not the F.
It's the subtle part, right? So, best purchase under $100.
Toaster oven. Toaster
Ooh,
oven. I had my parents give one to my husband for his birthday, and I was like, man, this is something you give in your 40s. But I will tell you, you can't eat out quite as much, and we still love to order, and it like reheats everything perfectly, and it's awesome. And I also feel like it's just definitely more green than us heating up our giant oven. So toaster oven all the way.
I'm so glad I'm not the only person that feels that way. I stayed with my parents over Christmas, and they have one in the little apartment above their
Yep.
garage. And I was just blown away, so much so that they bought me one for
Yeah,
Christmas.
I bought it. We don't have that much counter space. And I was like, do we really want this? And then I had them like surprise him with it. And it was great. It's like $76.
Best thing ever. If you could add any one word to the dictionary, what would it be and what would it mean? I love made up words. I'm a big fan.
I have two, but I'll give you the one that I'm probably would say the most, which is cha-cha. Which is not a good thing. I love being direct with people, but in ways that is digestible. So if I call you a cha-cha, it's not a good thing. It's like hey, you're being kind of a crazykins, or you're being high maintenance, or you're being entitled. So check yourself. So a cha-cha is, someone, if I walk into Edge and like someone's shit is all over because they've just had their bag has exploded, even though they're supposed to be keeping their stuff together. I'm like, hey, cha-cha, whose stuff is this? And you answer, yeah, you're being cha-cha right now. Time to fix it up. And I cha-cha myself all the time. Call myself a cha-cha when I'm out of line.
I do love that about you. You absolutely call yourself out just as much as you call out anybody else in the community. Well, Robyn, thanks for joining today. It's been awesome getting to chat with you a little bit. Guys, as we wrap up, Edge Athlete Lounge in Chicago, definitely check them out. They do have virtual memberships, so please, please, please check them out. They're amazing, great community. They do have 2 podcasts, the Coach Quip and the Edge Athlete Lounge podcast. And we will catch you on the next time around. Have a great day.